Sounding the leads for deeper insights into the West Coast Goldrush ports. Philip Ross May's West Coast Goldrush is still the best overall description of the West Coast Goldrush ports. In it, he gives the mining definition of a lead, a well-defined bed of auriferous wash dirt exposed or in a gully or creek. Not exposed actually, because its course could not be determined by the existing surface and the existing drainage system. So to find it, you put down a shaft vertically or roughly horizontally to find it and then follow it. Or you matched up the existing known leads from one terrace across to another one on the other side of the valley by lighting them up at night and seeing if you could transfer the level across to the other side. So that's very analogous to the maritime definition of a lead as well. It's a line that shows the best course for entering a harbour or through a channel that's indicated by a set of beacons, usually one behind the other, that you line up to get onto the lead. Currently Greymouth has 3 of these leads and Westport has 6. It's also can mark the line of a sounding course by dropping a lead on a line down off a vessel in the Goldrush times, or now electronically, to find the depth. And you would do it on lines that you would line up with a sextant and a compass so you knew where you were. Greymouth has 6 of these now, as does Westport, that's the leads. So both the mining term and the maritime term for sounding and leads sounds to me a bit like the way you do historical research as well. So where are we on the chart? So what were the West Coast Goldrush ports? Well, some of them were, starting in the north, Karamea, Little Wanganui, Mokanui, Westport, Nile, Charleston, Brighton, Cobden, Greymouth, Hokitika, Okarito, Bruce Bay, Okuru, Pass, Jackson Bay, and there were probably others. But I'm going to concentrate on Hokitika, because that's where we are, and also as Philip Ross May said, Hokitika was the great entrepot, the entrance port, queen of them all. The whole west coast was its empire. But I'm also going to talk a wee bit about Greymouth, because I had the privilege of reading most of the existing records from 1884, which still exist, and actually using them to figure out how to run the port from 1997 to 2009. They were the education on running the port. So the soundings for sources, what are we looking at? Well, most of the official records, from what I can make out, for Greymouth and possibly also Hokitika, were lost in the Marine Department head office fire in 1947. The summaries are still in the annual reports in the AJHR, appendices to the Journal of the House of Representatives. But for the Goldrush period, there isn't actually a great deal in writing. And Phil May relied on the official New Zealand statistics, the newspaper summaries, and he was aware of one of the gems in the Hokitika Museum, which I'll talk about as well. The newspaper reports are very good on arrivals, departures, the masters of the vessels, voyages, shipping instances, and separately from arrivals and departures, the customs clearances inward and outward. May does suspect that the West Coast Times didn't actually include the tugs and lighters that went between the river port and the roadstead port, unless they went on a coastal or international voyage as well. So they really understated the shipping movements. Now the gem in the Hokitika Museum collection is the Hokitika Signalman's Diary from the 21st of October 1865 to the 31st of December 1868 in the handwriting of James Trice, the signalman. Details every shipping movement and quite a bit more. Fortunately, somebody prior to about 1984 typed the transcript, and I actually had access to it. 200 typed pages of it. So that is a marvellous sounding mechanism. You can tell all sorts of things from that. Firstly, the volume of the shipping movements. Secondly, the causes of the success and failure. It does record a few drownings. It can be helped for dating the photos. And the digger's story last night, page 63, a photograph of four vessels. Isabella, Whitecrow and Lioness named, but the fourth one not. The second last entry in the diary probably tells us it was the Jane Elkin. Lioness towed in Isabella, Whitecrow steamed in, Elkin was also towed in by Lioness at the same time. It also can reveal quite a bit about family histories. And the one mariner that I have been tracing for the last 30 years in his ship, the Isabella, I can figure out by cross-referencing the West Coast Times, the Signalman's Diary, the baptism records at All Saints Church and the Hokitika birth registers, roughly when he first arrived at Hokitika, and also the date of conception of his first three children. Because he spent most of his time sitting off Hokitika at a lighter, waiting to unload big ships. And I knew when he was in port because it was hardly any of the time. This seminar encouraged me to spend a bit of time trying to find out some of the missing leads, the missing sounding mechanisms. The National Archives in Christchurch catalogues Collector of Customs Greymouth letterbook and another one, the Collector of Customs Greymouth letterbooks. But looking into them, which I did on the 6th of November, I found the gem of the Westland Harbour Master's letterbook. It was miscatalogued. That was Thomas Turnbull, the Harbour Master of the whole of the Westland south of the Grey River. And the Collector of Customs Hokitika letterbook was also mislabelled. The Harbour Master's letterbook, what I delved into it, showed me the staffing of the Harbour Department. It showed me the political interference or lack of commitment. The customs, well, I hadn't realised the Customs Department had such a big role over inquiries into shipwrecks and also some influence over the Harbours Department. But it gave me a clue to some of the records. 1865, the customs records didn't start until March, although we'll be celebrating the first ship, December 1864. So there's 3 months of records missing. They actually didn't actually put in the job description for Collector of Customs to collect the records until the Canterbury Provincial Secretary instructed George Sale, the Commissioner of the Goldfields, to provide the records because we wanted them for leaving revenue. So the customs staff had to work 96 hours overtime to actually produce these records back to March 1865. The harbour signalman's diary doesn't start till October 1865, so there are some of the early records just don't exist. But they're there. So what we seem to have the impression of nowadays is the treacherous rivermouth bar harbours. I'd like to suggest that this is a mythology that clouds the magnitude of the success of the Goldrush shipping, the Goldrush ports, the mariners, and peopling and supplying the Goldfields, and it also clouds how we look at port safety and the capability of the river ports today. So let's have a look at this definition of a bar. What do we actually mean? The treacherous bars of the West Coast ports. Well, the marine definition of a bar is where there's a shallow bit on the course between the open sea and where you want to tie up or moor your ship. So it's sort of deep water, shallow water, deep water on the way in. Sometimes it's just gradual. It's like that. There's no bar. But sometimes there are multiple bars and they're shifting all over the place. Sometimes the bar might not be there at all, which I have experienced at Greymouth. There has been no bar. Or it might be well up the river. About 2008, it was actually just downstream from the lagoon entrance by the Blaketown Rugby Club, about 600 metres up the river. That's where the bar was. So that's the technical definition. And some of the mythology that's come from it is that the bars caused the shipping incidents and the wrecks. The bars were created by the rivers. Actually, it was the predominantly north-flowing littoral drift that actually creates the bars. It's actually the rivers that cut through them, which the early engineers used by putting nozzles on the end of the rivers, which we now call the breakwaters, to blast through the bars. The bars reduced the capability of, reduces the capability of the remaining West Coast river ports of Greymouth and Westport. And that actually overlooks just how successful those ports have been. The bar is the problem. The West Coast needs a deep sea port. But without rivers to cut through them, the deep water port would silt up with a bar created by the littoral drift. We say we can't do much about safety except keep people away from the bar and guard them from its dangers. And in the last few months, the Grey District Council, the Port Authority at Greymouth, has passed a compulsory life jacket law within 200 metres of the bar. But where is the bar? How can you enforce it? Sounding vessels being sold. There's not staff to run the signal station or to give advice. And even as recently as the publication of the New Zealand Cycleways book earlier this year, the mythology has been added to when it says on the cycleway you can go out and look at a 400 metre long reclamation of famous Greymouth bar. And the photo is the man-made rock breakwater at Blaketown. That is the bar. That's the new mythology of the bar. And we build memorials to shipwrecks. And in Greymouth, the memorial boasts of the numbers. The competition between Greymouth and Hokitika have the most shipwrecks, rather than the achievements of those ports and those mariners with the Goldrush days and ever since. So the conditions of getting into and out of a West Coast port are rather more complex than a physical bar. These are the natural conditions, the tide height, the depth, location, always changing bar, the physical bar, the swell height, the direction, the current and the set, the wind speed, and knowing this and transmitting it for vessels coming in, you can't actually see it while we do soundings. It's the vessels themselves, their draft, their handling characteristics, their power, their reliability, their method of energy, whether it's oars, sail, steam or motor, their ability to receive and understand information. It's the human resource in the port, the transmission of the knowledge to the vessels, the experience of the masters and crew, the experience and knowledge of the port staff. Westport Harbour masters wouldn't be pilots at Greymouth because they said you have to live the bar, you have to live the entrance for at least 12 months. We are not going to come down and do it until we've lived there for 12 months. And there's the human and community aspect of the bar. There's the expectations, the commercial imperative to get a vessel in, or the need to get home, or just the sheer bravado of the crew of the vessel. That's the politics, the avoidance of risk by the politicians, the misunderstanding, the knowledge versus the myths. All of these things have contributed to vessel mishaps, not just the shallowness of the physical bar. And I believe now that we can probably define the way that people use the bar as all of those things, including the human mindset, the political mindset. That is part of the bar to me. It was my biggest bar actually as a port manager. Now we look at the ports. The ports had, most of them, or many of them, had 5 parts. It's the roadstead port, sitting out there that the big vessels discharged into other vessels, or where vessels waited to get in and out. It's the passage in and out. It's the wharf and the mooring. And for the Buller, the Grey and the Hokitika, it was also the upriver trade down to in and out from the seaport, up the Buller to the Lyle and the Inangahua, and up to the Grey to Howrah and Brunner, and up the Hokitika to Kanieri, and up down to Ruatapu. And it's the connections between all of these parts, the loading and unloading of the vessels. So imagine doing this out at sea, unloading off the big ships onto the smaller ones that come in and out. And it's the vessel types. The scheduled intercolonial large steamers, 500